Okay, welcome to From Eastland's podcast. This is episode 3. This is another episode based on Clarence High School in a way. So Clarence High School, obviously the school that I went to from years 7 to 10, from 1990 to 1993. And on the podcast last week, we had one of the members in my home group, Dustin Hollick, on the podcast. Already had over 90 listens on YouTube alone. And that's just within the last week. So we've got another special guest here today, and her name is Rachael Calvert, otherwise known as Rachael Fama. So we look forward to hearing from her very shortly. So yeah, it's been interesting. What a week it has been. And we get a public holiday here in Queensland on Monday. So, but with JobKeeper being a big thing going on at the moment, I can tell you that right now that's what I'll be doing tomorrow is getting those JobKeeper applications in and done. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So Rachael said she's ready to go. So just any moment now. Okay, sorry about that. We are ready. Yeah, so Rachael Calvert, coming on very shortly. Let's start again. Okay, looks like she's coming in to the room. Is that a glass of wine I see? You got? Can you hear me?
Hey.
How you going?
How you doing?
Yeah, very, very good. What are you drinking? What are you drinking?
Cider.
Cider, apple cider.
What? Yeah, it was like a toss up between 3 o'clock. Do I go coffee or do I go cider? Hey, it's Sunday. Every day Sunday I'm going cider.
It's great to see you, Rachael. So Rachael Calvert, formerly known as Rachael Fama. This is episode 3 of From Eastland's podcast, the new podcast series where I'm reconnecting with people, people I used to kick around with in Tasmania. So we need to balance it up a little bit today with, I guess, the first female guest of the new series. So welcome along, Rachael.
Thank you for having me, Tim. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so as I was basically saying, Dustin was also in our home class from year 7 to 10. I think we first met in year 7 at Clarence High, correct? Is that when we first met?
No, I didn't come to Clarence until year 8.
Was it year 8, was it?
Yeah, I went to Ogilvy in year 7 and then moved to Clarence in year 8. So, yeah, we were in Mr. Kelly's class, I think, you, me,
correct, that's
Dustin,
right.
Vaughan.
Jade Spearing, Rachael Hutchins.
Yeah. So I had a nice little crew going on there. And so 8, 9 and 10, I was at Clarence, 8,
9 and 10, yeah. So, and then you went to Rosny College after that? I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, I did. I was at Rosny. Yeah, I just went straight there from year 10 and did a couple of years there before I headed off travelling sort of by myself fairly quickly, went up the East Coast and did a bit of knocked around in Brisbane for a while and ended up doing a season at Mount Hotham. Was working sort of front of house F&B stuff for which was heaps of fun, and then came back and did I go? Oh no, sorry. Before I did that, I went and did nursing at uni for a year, and then I buggered off and went travelling. So yeah, I sort of.
We'll cover some of your travelling aspects and I guess what you sort of got up to, but just going back to those early days in your life, whereabouts were you born in Tasmania, or where were you born?
Yeah. I was born in Hobart, so same day as you, I believe. What hospital were you born in, Tim?
We've been shit. I should know this. I should know the hospital I was born in. I should know. But would have been in Hobart. Definitely was in
Yeah.
Hobart, and I should know that, eh? I think it was
Yeah.
Royal
I only
Hobart.
know.
Was there a Royal Hobart or?
Yeah, there would have been, but there was
What
also now where Vaucluse Gardens is, which is it's Bupa Aged Care. It used to be a hospital, and it was called Gore Street Hospital, which I always thought was funny, but it was just had such a hideous name. So that's
pretty
the only reason.
amazing. It's pretty amazing that, obviously both of us exactly have the same birthday. I think I was born at 4 in the morning. I believe that's. I think that's.
See, I don't know when I was born. No idea. Can't remember.
I know I was an ugly baby. I know that much. Wasn't very good looking.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second, Tim.
But who knows? That's just what I saw when I in some old pictures. But yeah, my sort of track was, I think it was only there. My dad was a bank manager. I don't know if you remember. And
yeah, I do.
We used to travel around. Well, in my first 10 years of life, we actually sort of travelled around quite a bit. Every 2 years we'd go from one branch to another. So it was Smithton when I was about 2, and then it was Ulverston, and then Launceston, and then Burnie, and then Burnie back down to the Hobart from when I was about year 5, I think it was. Year 5 onwards is sort of when I got. So I was there from year 5 until the age of 21, or basically in the same house for a lot of that time.
I grew up, my first home that I remember and suburb that I remember living in was Lauderdale. And I went to Lauderdale Primary. And then...
did you go to Lauderdale Primary, did you?
Sorry, I went to Lauderdale Primary School, but the infant school.
And then
I went to Sorrel for my sort of years, I guess it would have been 3, 4, 5, 6. Few notable characters. There was Mr. Ben Potmar involved in there, and also I think Jason Hawkes.
I'll tell you. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if you saw this in some recent stuff on Facebook, but one of the neighbours just next door only moved in about a month ago.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, Bronwyn Gaup.
What happened again, though? Tell me.
Bronwyn Gaup, and do you remember Bronwyn?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Bronwyn was saying that she was fairly well acquainted back in the day with Mr. Ben Potmar. I won't go say anything more than that.
I wonder where he is these days. I know Hawkeye's still kicking around. I see him.
Possibly the Sunshine Coast, but we don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Actually, that sounds about right.
I don't know. That's just a possible. I don't know. I'm sure he's got his own.
So yeah, I went from Sorrel I went to Ogilvy in year 7. My sister had been there. We were living at Fawcett at the time, and my sister had been going to Ogilvy as a boarder for a few years and absolutely loved it. But we actually moved closer to town, so I didn't need to board. I just went there for year 7. And look, it was a really good school then, but I had a few issues with a couple of less than friendly young girls. So I moved to Clarence in year 8, and that sort of coincided with me moving my family home, moving to South Street. So I don't know if you remember, but I just lived in the street next to the school.
Yeah, so, South Street in Bellerive, yeah?
Yeah. So there was many a lunch hour illegally spent at my house by many people in Clarence, and plenty of weekends and things, given that Dad, as most people knew at the time, was a police officer and was usually at work.
That's right, yeah. He was was he a sergeant then, or what was he?
He was a senior sergeant.
Senior
sergeant. Yeah, I don't know. That was before he moved up to the East Coast, and he ended up being the cop in sort of Orford and Tribunna until he retired a few years ago. So, but yes, it was certainly interesting being the policeman's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting a fair bit of stick about that from various people, but nothing really terrible. Like I sort of led myself into it a lot of the time, just being the way I was. So but anyway, so Clarence 8, 9, 10, and then Ogilvy, Rosny 11, 12.
So what do you remember from your days at Clarence? I mean, obviously we're in the same home class. I think we had a pretty chilled out sort of home teacher, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, Mr. Kelly was pretty cool.
He was obviously a woodwork or metalwork teacher from memory, but obviously we never probably did a class with him, but apart from the home class. But no, it was a good school. I mean, obviously you meet a lot of friends and friends that are still around from Clarence High, and I think it was about 7 years ago we had that 20-year reunion. I think you went to that as well.
Yep.
We were able to catch up then.
Oh, God, was that 7 years ago? Far out.
Yeah, nearly 7. It was in September or something coming up. September 13.
Was. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember. We had a reasonable, not too bad a turnout to that, but it just sort of remembers some of the people we used to sort of hang around with and that sort of thing. So
yeah, look, I haven't kept in touch with many people from high school, or really, I mean, apart from sort of this kind of commenting and saying hi and stuff on Facebook, and I know you and I chat a bit about, especially about music. But I sort of, my best friends that have remained my closest friends since that time were all a little bit older than me. So
okay.
So my bestest girlfriends, so Helen Page and Rebecca Lowe. Beck went to Clarence, and she was
Helen Page. Was she above us? Was she Helen Page?
Yeah, and then she didn't go to Clarence. She went to Montague Bay, but she was at Rosny when we were there, and they've sort of remained my closest friends from that era in my life. I was obviously very close when I was at school with lots of people and had lots of great friends, and obviously some of those people are still kicking around, some of them not so much. Obviously we've lost a few, which is pretty sad. And
that is sad. I mean, we won't sort of dwell on that too much, but it's sad when you see your friends, sort of go through that sort of, or people that we knew.
But it's been nice also to see so many people have such lovely lives. Like, I love seeing Gene Miley's posts about his kick-ass family and his kids and his wife and how amazing they are, and obviously
good guy,
Louisa Valentine's gone on to have a pretty interesting life, and I've bumped into many people. She's
married to Brett Bolton, isn't she? The guy, he's been a fairly good coach in the AFL.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sacrificial lamb. But so, and obviously, I followed Justin's, filmmaking career and his surfing career earlier on. So, I have certainly kept in touch with some people loosely, but not a great deal. High school to me is a bit of a blur, to be honest.
It's just a long time ago, isn't it? Such long ago. Yeah, the memories you have to, like Dustin last week sort of jogged my memory a little bit about. I used to write these lists of the songs and stuff.
I was watching that and I was like,
I said, oh shit, I can't remember. I couldn't remember. But then I just sort of, I do remember that list. So it used to be a stats list. That was always a fascination of mine.
It was your thing,
Probably still is to this day somewhere. But
it is if you look at the way the music side of things, especially around the Hottest 100 time. I think that's very telling of your interests as a kid.
I like to, exactly. It's you get involved in a numbers way. You statistically trying to work out which song's going to win this year.
Tim, this year just gone, I think I actively said to you I don't want to speak to you for the month beforehand because you always get it right, and I'm always like, oh damn it, I wish I didn't know. So don't be offended, mate. I'm probably going to block you for the month in the lead up to the Hottest 100.
No, I did get it right with Billie Eilish and Bad Guy. I was onto that.
Yeah, which actually wasn't a great surprise. So I didn't. Whereas the year before, when it was like Ocean Alley, and you said, nah, it's definitely going to be Confidence, I was like, no way, man. And then it totally was. And
I knew sort of middle of December. I'll see.
Yeah.
I laid some money down all the way back then. It was, but that's fun. I mean, we both Triple J. I mean, my wife sort of got me back into Triple J about 9 years ago. That's how I sort of got back into it in the sort of mid-late 90s. I used to like listen to the countdown. I remember one year it was the Whitlams won the countdown. It was very much a surprise at the time.
No Aphrodisiac. I think that was like 97 maybe.
Yeah, it was. It won, and it was a surprise. And then the next year after that, I think it was like Pretty Fly for a White Guy won or something. It was. It was crazy. Some of the songs that used to be number one, they were a bit. And then you had the Powderfinger era, and they were sort of dominating with Silverchair and Powderfinger, and and
good times. Best era of music, I reckon. Was a very much a certainly for me, live music is a huge part of my life and always has been, and that's why I'm almost entirely deaf and suffer really badly from tinnitus. I've been going to live bands since probably year 11.
So how many times have you been to? How many times have you been to Falls Festival at Marion Bay?
Look, actually, Falls, I haven't been for quite a few years because my work, as it has been for the last few years, has always been, that's my peak period, and I just just can't really take that time out. And prior to that, I just didn't really have. It's pretty expensive to go to Falls these days. Like, you know, $300-400 for a ticket, and then by the time you buy all your food and smuggle in your booze, which is the best bit, you know, you still got to buy booze, and the next minute, you know, you're down $1,000 or more. So, look, as you get a bit older, I mean, I still love live music, and I love the idea of going to a festival, and I do still go to festivals when I can. But I'm just as happy to kind of, you know, buy a seated ticket at a gig than to buy a GA ticket and be up the front. I started going. I think my first live gig was probably when I was about 7 or 8, and I went to see 1927, who were amazing.
Classic band, I know. I saw them probably about 8 years ago. Actually, they were when Roxette was Rock. Well, it was only Roxette. They were pre-act for Roxette at just up here in Brisbane, the entertainment centre. So it was that was 1927.
Yeah, I saw them down here at the casino only probably 2 or 3 years ago with Pseudo Echo, and it was killer. Yeah. But yeah, when I was a kid, I went to see, you know, live music with my parents. So I saw Dire Straits and, you know, obviously John Farnham, and I saw 1927.
Were you a big John Farnham fan growing up? Or?
Yeah, man. yeah. Huge.
Feel like him now?
Loved him. I've met him a couple of times, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, you probably don't, but during college, or maybe it was just after college, I managed, remember Brash's, the record store in...
Yeah, I remember.
Closed down.
Yep.
I used to manage I was assistant manager for the Liverpool Street store and then the Centrepoint store for a few years. And so I met quite a few big names at the time through that, because they'd come down to do signings and, you know, in-store performances and stuff. So I met old Farn Dog there a couple of times. Got I think for I can't remember what album, Romeo's Heart or something terrible, I got signed for Mum. But so I was always very, very, very much into music. And then I went to, when I was 15, just turned 15, I convinced my mum.
Year 10, basically, isn't it? Yeah.
No, I was a bit younger. So I was 14. Are you same age? Same age. 78. Yeah. So I was 14 for the beginning of year 10.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah. And then I think so. It must have been March.
We turned 15
year 11.
that year. Yeah.
March year 11. I convinced my mum to let me fly unaccompanied with my best mate to Melbourne to stay for the weekend and see Pearl Jam.
Wow.
And I can't believe she let me go. And to repay her trust,
what was the venue for that one in Melbourne?
It was Rod Laver.
Oh yeah, that would have been so.
And, we stayed in a hotel. Stayed in a hotel by ourselves. We were 15 and went to see Pearl Jam, which was just the most incredible thing I'd ever seen in my life. And to commemorate the occasion and to repay my mother for her trust, I came home with a tattoo and a nose ring. So that was a good start. So that was the beginning of it. And then after that, I mean, I've just been to more live music than I could ever remember and seen some incredibly good bands all around the world, and not protected my hearing properly for most of that. So I think I went to a Queen's donation. No, it was Faith No More. A few, like 10 years ago, maybe at the at where was it? The Festival Hall in Melbourne, which is a grungy as venue at the time, and it was just the loudest gig I'd ever been to in my life. And usually my ears would ring a bit for a few days afterwards and then sort of taper off. But ever since that gig, they've just been screwed. So I do wear earplugs now, but it's kind of a little bit too little too late. So anyway.
Is there any bands that you haven't seen that you wish you would have seen by now? Or
I've kind of seen, I mean, obviously the ones that you can't see are the ones that you want to see. Like I wish to God that I'd seen Jeff Buckley and I'd seen Nirvana.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I still remember the night that Jeff Buckley played live in Melbourne, and I begged Mum to let me go, and she just said nah, because I'd obviously blown my chances when I screwed up the nose ring thing in Belgium. And so I sat at Pat Sansom Gower's house in, if you remember that, the house that her mum had in Rosny was pretty famous in the day, and I sat in the shed and listened to that and live broadcast on Triple J and just thought, oh my God, you know, I'm never going to forgive Mum for not letting me go to this. And then it was probably only 2 years after that he died. Nirvana obviously had no chance really of that becoming a reality, but look, I've actually seen most of the bands that are really special to me. Like I've seen Pearl Jam a few times, I've seen Soundgarden and Tool like loads of times, and Footies and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, and I've also, I've got a pretty broad taste in music, which is why I was quite good at my job managing a record store. I have, you know, I love pop and I love female vocalists and I love a bit of country, and saw Kenny before he kicked the bucket.
Have you ever been to like a music muster, like a country sort of music festival?
No, I've been to sort of like small country festivals in the UK, but nothing like Tamworth or anything like that. Yeah, but I've sort of, you know, I've really have spent, I could buy a house or two with the money that I've spent on live music. But that's okay, it's all been worth it, and I've had some amazing experiences, and, you know, danced on stage with various people, and, you know, crowd jumped off stages into crowd surfing and, you know, played silly buggers. So yeah, I probably wouldn't do any of that now, but I still really, like the last gig I went to before everything shut down was I went to Down to Earth in Melbourne, which was the fire relief fundraiser, and it was all Aussie acts. It was fantastic. Thelma Blanc, Jack River, and, you know, what are their names? Bloody Angus and Julia Stone, can't believe I couldn't get that now.
I've seen them before too.
And Briggs and everyone, it was great. And obviously headlined by Gang of Youths, who I'm completely obsessed with. And
so you're a huge fan of Gang of Youths, aren't you? Huge fan.
Huge, yeah. So that was fantastic, and a really awesome environment, really good energy, good crowd participation. Everybody was happy and enjoying themselves. So yeah, I had a bunch of tickets lined up for stuff, but obviously that's all fallen by the wayside. My new pick, Tim, for up-and-coming kick-ass Aussie band is the Vans. The Vans. Get around, people.
Really?
Yeah, they are amazing. Yeah. So I actually was supposed to see them a couple of weeks ago, but obviously that didn't
So
happen.
the Vans, where they're playing in Hobart, where were they going to?
There's a new venue here in Tassie.
Yeah. What's that called?
Altar. And it's the Altar, and it's part of the Mona kind of dark lab.
So it's near Mona?
No, it's in town, and it's a 24-hour venue.
Okay.
It's in
24
the
hours.
old, yeah, it was obviously not at the moment, but it is when it's open. It's in the old Tattersalls building in Murray Street, and it's part of, as I said, Dark Lab, which is like an extension of Mona's events department. That are sort of like they sort of organise and facilitate events that are off-site from Mona, so they're very involved in obviously Dark Mofo and Mona-sponsored events outside of the museum grounds. And they developed this venue, which is, yeah, got a kick-ass live music kind of enclosed venue, and then there's a big, massive outdoor venue as well that's called the Hanging Gardens. That, you know, I've seen the TSO play there and stuff like that, and it's open 24 hours a day, and it's really fucking good. So huge,
Wow.
like really beautiful venue right in the middle of Hobart, which you just would never know was there because it's just so beautifully designed. But that's what Mona do. They do stuff like that well. So.
Cool. So music, yeah, there's so many different things we can talk about with music, that's for sure. I always come back to those conversations. Just wanted to probably get an idea. We're sort of talking earlier about, I guess, traveling and living in other parts of the world. You mentioned you've been in the UK. Tell us about some of your travels around the world. Where have you been and what have you enjoyed?
So once I had come back from doing my kind of solo jaunt, I did a chef's apprenticeship at a restaurant that's now closed. It was called A Splash of Paris, and it was next to T42. It was the opening restaurant in the Elizabeth Street Pier. Yeah. Yep. So T42 is still kicking on, and Splash was a 120-seater contemporary French restaurant, and my head chef was a guy named Mark Wilsden, who is now and has been for the last 10 years the chair of Mona, which is why I have such a close relationship with Mona. So I did my apprenticeship with him, and then I met Wad, so the apprentice next door. I hooked up with him, and he and I went travelling together up the East Coast again, and bought an old van and drove up the East Coast and ended up on an island in North Queensland called Great Keppel, and where we met some of our lifelong friends and had a couple of years, I think, living on this tiny little tropical island, which was just fabulous, really hard. We worked our guts out, as you do in hospitality. I actually came out of the kitchen and managed the restaurant and a couple of the bars at the resort. And it's about 110 or 20 staff, and we were all like family. We all lived together, worked together, did everything together, but we all partied pretty hard, and, you know, which was pretty amazing on a tropical island. You just felt so removed from reality, and it was just amazing. So we did that for a couple of years, and then we came home for a little bit to save a bit of cash, and then we flew to Edinburgh. And the plan was to go to sort of meet up with a few other people in Edinburgh, you know, work for a bit, earn a few pounds, because obviously we got there with dollars and they weren't worth shit. And, you know, earn a few pounds and then keep moving. But we just fell in love with Edinburgh, like completely fell in love with it. And I ended up living there for probably 5.5 or 6 years. And during that time, my ex and I, we broke up. Hang on a sec, my dog's just scratching the door. Yeah, so I was working for a company called The Living Room, which was a really amazing restaurant and bar operations group that had sites all around the UK, and I became their national restaurant training manager. So I spent 4 or 5 years with Edinburgh as my base, but I spent a lot of time travelling around the UK, opening up new restaurants and bars and training staff and training managers. And so I spent a lot of time in places like Glasgow and Oxford and Newcastle and Cambridge and Liverpool and Manchester and places like that. So it was absolutely amazing, and totally, like, I worked hard, really hard, like 100 hours a week hard.
That's pretty hard.
And, yeah, and just about killed myself, to be honest. Most people who worked in our company worked at that sort of level, but then we all just partied at that same level. I don't know how I came out of it alive, to be honest. But, you know, I was in my mid-20s and I was pretty invincible, and I just thought, you know, I was living the dream. It was amazing. I was earning great money, you know, could catch a plane to Dublin for my weekend, or, you know, nick over to Italy. I went to Italy heaps of times, loved it there, Turkey and Greece, and didn't travel as much as I should have, given how much opportunity I had to do that, because I was such a workaholic. I didn't give myself the time to do it, but when I did take breaks, I really did some good exploring. So I came home. I did come home to Tassie a couple of times.
If you all the places in Europe that you've been to, what do you think your favourite place in Europe was?
Edinburgh.
Yeah. Okay.
It's got this beautiful feeling about it. It's just got this energy and an incredibly blue sky. It has a lot of elements that reminded me of Hobart. Obviously, it's much, much older than Hobart, but it's not that dissimilar in size. It has a real community feel about it, especially amongst the hospitality community. And it just felt really comfortable to me, and I felt, I had a beautiful apartment that I just fluked. I don't know how I got it, but it was like, I had a bay window in my bedroom that framed the castle that I fell asleep to every night, and
wow.
I'd wake up in the morning to the lone piper playing, the bagpipes on my bottom of my doorstep. It was just amazing. So I just completely loved it. I have spent quite a lot of time in Italy, and I've got a real soft spot for Italy, and particularly different parts of Tuscany. Siena, I love Siena, and obviously because of the food and the wine. So yeah, look, I haven't been to as many places as most people who've been to Europe, and I think that's partially. Oh, there we go, the old Reiki. I think it's partially because I was a bit complacent because it was so close, and it was so easy for me to travel. I was like, oh, I'll do that again. I'll do that next time or whatever. Whereas when you're in Australia and you plan a trip to Europe, and you take 6 weeks minimum, and you 3 whatever, and you pack in all of the countries that you can pack in. But when you're like a 45-minute flight from most of those places, it was like, it was just I was a bit complacent, and I really regret that, actually.
Did you see any of Scandinavia?
No, and that's a big regret. And that's actually on my list to go back and really see,
Definitely do that.
When I did come home, I flew home for a break at the end of Christmas 2006, because I was burnt out, like completely burnt out from my job. And I actually planned on going back, and I'd already made a deal with myself that, take this break, Rachael, calm your farm, and when you go back to Edinburgh, be kinder to yourself and take some time to smell the roses and appreciate the opportunity that you have for living in Edinburgh. And so I took leave from my work, which was, really hard to do. And I sublet my flat, and I left most of my stuff there. I just came home with a suitcase. And I got back to Tasmania, and I met Daniel, my partner, and I've never been back. So I had to, actually I have been back once for a very brief moment, but I had to ring my boss and say, hey, I said I was coming back. Well, I'm not. And then I was like, I had to get my ex-husband to go and pack up my flat and ship all my stuff back to Tassie. I was like, oh yeah, I've met someone, But anyway, he was very kind and he did that for me. But yeah, so when I left Edinburgh, I actually didn't know I needed to say goodbye to it. So I always just thought I'd go back there, and then I didn't. And so I think it's always just had this really special place in my heart.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. Now, there's a few things that probably I didn't know too much about, but if you look at what you've been up to on LinkedIn, it says that civil celebrant, obviously a lot of catering type businesses, and tell us a bit about that, because I did have a guest once on one of the other podcasts who was a civil celebrant.
Okay, so most of my life I've been working in hospitality in some form. So front of house, restaurant management, you know, kitchens, obviously, bars, event management, planning, that whole bit. And throughout the course of that, I was a part of so many weddings and did the catering or ran the bar or, you know, made the cake. And so I just always really liked weddings, even though my first one didn't go so well. And the only thing I hadn't really done, the only component of the wedding that I hadn't done was to be the celebrant. And I just always thought I'd enjoy it. I just, you know, just sort of thought it'd be a fun thing to do. So about 7 or 8 years ago, it was probably actually, 8 or 9 years ago actually, a friend of mine was getting married and she was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you'd be the celebrant? And I was like, yeah, okay. So I did the course in Melbourne. It's called a Certificate 4 in Civil Celebrancy. And it was incredibly boring, but well, no, that's not true. Not boring. There was elements of it that were boring, but it was actually, a lot of it was quite interesting about, you know, learning about interpreting the Marriage Act and the various, you know, different scenarios and case studies and things. And it was quite repetitive. It took about 6 months to complete the course, and it was pretty taxing, but I did it, and I became a celebrant. And then a very short time before I was kind of due to perform my first wedding, I got quite sick with breast cancer, and so I had to take a couple of years out. Like, I just had to, you know, kind of everything just went on hold, and I had to have, you know, quite a few surgeries and lots of chemo and radiation and stuff. But, you know, it was a couple of years out of my life, and it was shit, but it wasn't that bad. And, you know, I'm here. So I didn't really perform any weddings for quite a while after I became qualified. And then, and then I started, once I was starting to feel a bit better, I agreed to be my cousin's celebrant, and so I performed her wedding. And then for the first kind of year or two, and the first couple of dozen weddings I did, they were all just kind of friends and family, and it was a bit of a, you know, sort of like my gift to them, like my wedding gift. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. And then I happened to be asked to do a wedding of somebody I didn't actually know. And I was like, oh, you know, I didn't feel like a professional celebrant. I was very much just, you know, someone that stood up the front and, you know, said some nice things about some funny stuff and, you know, got the legal stuff signed off, and that was that. But I got asked to be paid as a celebrant for a friend of a friend. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went along, and at the time I had another business running at the same alongside, which was a wholesale bakery, which was really, really, really hard and very early starts and really draining. And I was just like, I can't do both of these things. It's just too hard. So I decided I'd just do this one last wedding, and that was it. I'm out. And but I did this wedding. I met the couple, they were gorgeous, and I smashed it. And after the ceremony, the wedding planner and the venue manager and the photographer and everybody sort of came up to me, and they were like, that was really good. Like, it was really different and really, like, not your usual wedding. Like, and they were like, have you got a business card? And I'm like, no. And they're like, what about a Facebook page? And I'm like, no. And they were like, oh, can we have your number? And I was like, oh, I'm not really I've decided I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, I've got another business. I need to focus on that. And they were like, no, you have to do this. And I said, look, you know, add me on Facebook, you know, personal friend request, and we'll keep in touch. And then about 6 months later, I decided to sell my other business. And in that time. So
which business was that you sold?
It was called the Hobart Cake Company, and it was just a wholesale bakery that sort of supplied cakes, muffins, shit like that to like the State and Retro and Hill Street and stuff. I had about probably 8 staff, and it was like a 7-day operation. It was full on. So anyway, when I sold that, I thought, I'm just going to, you know, give weddings a go, just give it a crack and sort of see, you know, how I go. So people started booking me, and I thought, oh, I better get a website. And I did a few chefing jobs alongside that here and there, just to kind of keep things ticking over. And my most recent one, I was the chef for Her Excellency Kate Warner, the Governor of Tasmania. I was her personal chef for a few years so I did that part-time, and I did that until February last year. And then I was like, right, had it finished with you cooking, never want to do that again. Even though that was an amazing job, I was just ready to leave kitchens. And so since then I've been full-time as a wedding celebrant.
And so how many bookings would you do? I'll just go back last year. How many bookings would you have done last year with weddings?
I think I did about 50 or 60.
Wow, that's a lot, yeah.
Not as many as a lot of celebrants. In fact, I've got friends that'll do 2 or 3 a week.
Yeah. I
do 2 or 3 a week in the busy periods, and then it slows down to sort of 1 or 2 a week over the quieter months like June, July, August. But yeah, so I just had the arse fall out of my business, obviously, because of COVID. So I went from having my busiest season I've ever had. I had something like 14 weddings in March, and I got through about 10, and then the restrictions came into play, and pretty much every single couple that I had booked between the end of March and September either cancelled or postponed. So there was about probably another 18 couples or something. So most of them have pushed it back 6 to 12 months, and I'm hoping that will go ahead, and they've kept me on as their celebrant. But some of them actually had to cancel and chose to stay. I do a lot of destination weddings, a lot of couples visiting from interstate and overseas. I do a lot of elopements. And I'm very lucky to be considered a good celebrant, and I'm the expensive celebrant. And I put a lot of effort in, and I write really personal, unique ceremonies. That's blank page, start with blank page every time. There's no templates or anything. It's just a really organic process for me, and it's a really good creative outlet to write and to create a really beautiful memory for people, set the tone for a killer party. And I think that for a long time, most weddings that any of us have been to or were a part of, the ceremony, you can't really remember it. It's just sort of that bit of the wedding that you just kind of like looking at your watch going, come on, I need a drink. And so it's just really boring, and you're just like, it's not, and I, along with quite a few celebrants now that, are of my generation and even younger, are changing that. And so that the ceremony is actually the highlight. It's the bit that couples consistently say to me, afterwards, Rach, we just can't believe how awesome that was. And that was our favourite thing of the whole day. So that's really cool. And I've been winning some awards and being featured in some, different wedding publications and stuff. Yeah, so it was a bit of a shame that COVID happened when it did.
So what have you sort of been doing in April and beyond with what's happened with COVID? I mean, what have you just taken the time to sort of take stock a bit, relax, take it easy, or what have you been doing some other interesting things?
Well, I've still got work to do. I'm not performing any ceremonies, but I've got, 50 weddings on my books. So I've still got lots of couples to communicate with, and a lot of admin. I have to do regular training, which this year is all happening online, but there's ongoing professional development that I have to do to maintain my registration. And I've sort of got plenty of work to do, but in the absence of having actual ceremonies to do and sort of not really taking any money, I have gone back to the kitchen.
Obviously, a very good chef.
Oh, look, I get by. I'm never going to win any awards for cooking, let's put it that way. But no, a friend of mine works for a charity here, or not-for-profit, called Colony 47, which is an organisation here in Tassie that looks after or helps vulnerable people in the community, particularly usually younger people, but not always, with finding meaningful and stable employment and housing. And one of the programs that they run in their mental health area is the members of that program would normally come and congregate in this little clubhouse and cook themselves lunch and all kind of, learn skills, life skills and stuff. And obviously at the moment they can't do that. So I have been asked to prepare weekly menus for them that are basically using donations from different food bank and Second Bite and Government House have been really helpful in providing produce and things like that. And then I design a menu that's kind of got some nutritional elements in it, and make meals that can be delivered to their homes each day by their social workers, so that they have a contact with a real person, and we know they're getting at least one good meal a day. And so, yeah, I've been doing that a couple of days a week, 2 to 3 days a week for this time. So that won't be a long-term thing, but was a bit of a, scramble to get a program like that set up. But thankfully I have a lot of good contacts and relationships in the hospitality industry here still. So I was able to call in some favours and get it up and running pretty quick.
So what do you think the future looks like for what you want to do as far as business is concerned? Do you see yourself doing what you're doing now for the next decade or so, or do you think there's something?
Yeah, I do. So, look, when it got to the point, the fork in the road where I had to decide, am I going to continue cooking or am I going to, throw everything at weddings and make a go of this? I had to think about a few things, and they were, can I see myself cooking in 10 years? And I honestly, I couldn't. It's really hard physically. It's a really hard job. And, it's obviously long hours. It's pretty antisocial, although the Government House role was really, really, really flexible and amazing. It's just, you still, you work with tricky people. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Kitchens attract tricky people. and I just, it was great in my 20s, it was awesome in my 30s, in my 40s, I'm like, I just can't be bothered with the drama. I just want to, do my job and feel good about it and go home and not dream about the stress of it and, wake up going, oh, worrying about, have I ordered this for that event and what it will, So when I thought about weddings, I thought I could see myself doing that for forever, and yes, that will mean I'll end up one of those, 60 to 70-year-old celebrant ladies that, but I just hope I never get stereotyped like that. But yeah, it's something that for whatever reason I've discovered I'm quite good at it. And I get to marry incredible people in incredible places, and people pay me to do that and fly me places and pay for me to stay in beautiful parts of the world. So, well, parts of the state, I should say. So, yeah, why wouldn't you want to do that? So, thankfully, my partner has a very stable job. He's in IT and he's been working from home for a couple of months now. And he's a massive introvert. So this is the virus he was born to live through. He's loving it. And that has given me a little bit of stability in order for me to take a few risks with this career. And yeah, so it was actually quite reassuring when this COVID thing happened, knowing that my business is me. It's just me. I've got a great PA system and whatever, but I'm not paying rent on a site somewhere. I don't have staff.
You obviously work from home and you just organise everything from there, which is really good.
Yeah, which I was doing anyway. But now I'd be rushing around every day having meetings and rehearsals and and now I just have meetings on Skype and I've got my little office and but yeah, I was really grateful when the apocalypse happened that it was I knew that I would survive and be here at the end of this. No one can take away my business from me because it's me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I felt really reassured by that and really grateful for that. And so, and I've just stayed in close contact with all my couples and made sure that they kept up to date with what's going on here in Tassie. Most of them are interstaters, so it's going to be very much dependent on travel restrictions as to whether those weddings go ahead. But some of them
what's the general feeling, I guess, in Tasmania about COVID? I mean, obviously, what are people saying as far as, you know, are they sort of, a lot of people worried about things there, or are people just sort of taking it like with the flow sort of thing, or anything else that might sort of affect the community?
Well, I think for the most part, people have taken it seriously. I certainly, amongst my friends and family and the people that in my community, I live in Blackmans Bay, which is just near Kingston. You know, we've got a beautiful beach, great community of our neighbours are awesome. We love it here. But yeah, people have taken it seriously, and I think Tasmania as a whole has actually done a great job at, you know, staying home and I mean, I haven't hugged my mum in, you know, we went for a walk today. We went for a socially distanced walk on the beach.
But do you actually live near with your mum, or?
No, I don't. Mum was driving down to Bunnings and so she needed something to fix something in her oven or something. So she said, I'm in Kingston. Do you want to go for a quick walk? And I was like, okay. But yeah, so, but I, you know, like I'm super close to my mum. She's like my best friend. And I would normally go to her house every day on my way home from work or on my way to the gym or on my way back from a wedding, have a glass of champagne, debrief. And I think I've seen her like 2 or 3 times in the last couple of months, and I haven't hugged her, and you know that's been tough. But Tassie is in a very unique situation in that we have a naturally well protected border because we're an island, and
of course,
apart from this terrible breakout in the northwest, which is
around Burnie, was it, or?
Oh, it's like Burnie, Devon. It's like the northwest region. It's like so the Northwest Regional Hospital and another hospital had to close because there was
how many infections do they have up there?
Oh, like 150 or something.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like 2/3 of the state's total or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't get a handle on it, and so that's only now coming in. They put 5,000 people into forced lockdown. So all hospital staff and their families of 2 hospitals, and they brought in the AFD Defence Force medical teams to run the hospitals, to clean the hospitals from top to bottom and then run them. So it's pretty intense. But I think on the whole, I mean, we've lost, I think there's been 13 deaths and all elderly. And, you know, the Ruby Princess has been behind many of those. But Tassie's, I mean, we've got an ageing population, we've got a vulnerable population, we've got an incredibly competent premier who I'm surprised.
This is the guy that's taken over Hodgson.
Yeah.
Will Hodgman, sorry. Yeah.
Will Hodgman, you know, it was choreographed. It was like he knew something was going on and he just like smoke bombed, got out of the way. Old Peter steps up and goes, yeah, g'day mates, you know, not really knowing how this is going to go, and then bang, COVID. And gee, he's dealt with it incredibly well. He's been really proactive. I mean, I'm, you know, obviously, well not obviously, but I'm not a Liberal voter and can't imagine I would ever be. But he is, the way the politicians in Tassie have actually put aside their political beliefs and just united the Labor head of, you know, Labor leader, the Greens leader and the Liberal Premier have all united to get shit done. And, you know, we closed the borders and stopped cruise ships before anywhere else in Australia. And we're benefiting from that now. So I think we've probably got another couple of, I think we will kind of reopen slower than most other states because we have to consider our ageing population. and also we have very high levels of unemployment and disadvantaged people. So we have to be mindful of that. But I think Tassie's done really well. I'm really proud of the way we've handled it. And I've taken this time as really a bit of a blessing. Initially, I was a bit, emotional about it, and I was a bit scared and worried, and tried not to panic buy anything. But I've actually realised that it's been a really incredible opportunity for a lot of people. Obviously, it's been devastatingly hard for so many. And I mean, I've lost my business. Well, my business has gone into hibernation, but I've lost my income, whatever. But it's just been such a great time for me to take a breath, to get some sleep, to not say yes to everything, to not feel any guilt for not going. I do a lot. I'm a busy person. So to just kind of...
It seemed like you're really busy. Even though it hasn't been...
I talk so much, Tim.
Well, you talk a bit, that's for sure. But what you're saying before, that Tasmania's a fairly ageing sort of population. It's the average age of Tasmania is exactly the same age as what we are, 42. So
really?
we're the average age, and if you look at the rest of Australia, it's about 37. 37.
Yeah.
So you are right. It's certainly on. It only goes south from here.
Yeah.
When it comes to age,
look, Tassie, moving back to Tassie was a great decision.
what year was that? What year did you move back exactly?
What year is it now? It must have been 2013.
So the year 13, of the reunion.
14?
The year of the reunion?
Yeah, actually, it was the year of the reunion. So I moved home to Tassie in August that year.
So the next month.
And then I think our reunion was in
September.
Was it September or October? Yeah. So I'd only been home for a short while. I'd moved home. I bought that cake business, the bakery.
Yep. Yep.
And so at the reunion, I was, I don't think I'd slept in about 6 weeks. I was so exhausted. And I do remember Jean Miley scraping me off the dance floor at Mobius. And
where
Lisa Rose and him at Mobius. Did we go to Mobius?
Is that along in Northwood somewhere? I can't believe it.
It's like behind Customs House, but like underneath.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Like dodgy as fuck.
Oh, really?
But so I remember Lisa Rose and Jean putting me in a taxi at about, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something. And that was a big night. But so that's when I moved home to Tassie. And we'd been in Melbourne for 5 years prior to that, and Sydney for maybe 3 or 4 prior to that. And, we wanted to buy a house, we wanted to get a dog, we wanted to be near our parents. Obviously I'd been... 2013,
that would have been a good time to buy, because that's when the prices were reasonable, I guess, compared to what they are now.
Yeah, look, we snuck in. We got a half decent, it's actually... kind of looks all right in that in this shot, but it's actually a pretty old sort of shacky kind of vertical board bungalow, but it's got lovely light and big windows, and we're a couple of minutes walk from the beach, and I never really considered living south of Hobart. I was always an Eastern Shore girl, or I was in Mount Nelson for a while, and then when I had the business, the cake business, we rented in West Hobart for a few years, which was awesome. So when we decided to buy, Blackman's Bay wasn't even on our radar, but we looked at, South Hobart, Newtown, Lenna Valley. We went and looked in houses in Lindisfarne and Howrah. And, you go to an open home on the weekends and there'd be, 30 odd people there. And half of them would have offers signed, ready to hand over before they'd even, walk through the door. And we just didn't really have much of a chance of getting into that market. So Danny suggested we look a little bit further south, and we looked at a couple in Kingston, and then we found this place, which is in the old parts. So it's the original kind of character homes, like they were built as shacks. And it's a 3-bedroom, pretty decent big block, needs a lot of work, which we haven't done yet, but we will. We paid $320.
It's very cheap.
So we're pretty happy. Yeah. And we've got a yard and a dog, and we didn't do the kids thing. That wasn't our thing. But we knew we'd never afford to buy into the market in Melbourne without going into the suburbia, which neither of us were interested in. We'd always lived really centrally in Melbourne, in Richmond, and then a year before I had breast cancer, my partner Danny had testicular cancer. So we had like a double banger in like a year and a half. And so that kind of,
strong survivor.
and he's fine. Yeah, and he's fine. We're both fine, but it was a pretty tough couple of years. And we, our parents kind of both took it in turns and flying over to look after us and be there and visit and stuff. And we were in the best place we could possibly be to access the best treatment that we could, which was an incredible treatment. I had an amazing team of specialists, and I felt so looked after, and so I never for a moment doubted that I wasn't going to be fine. I just knew I would. I just knew I had to grit my teeth to get through it. But once that was all done, we realised that we wanted to be near our families. We just wanted to move home. We wanted to be able to.
So his family was in Tassie as well?
Yeah, they're in Lindisfarne. Yeah, so it was the best decision ever. And now, instead of living in Melbourne and coming home to Tassie a couple of times or a few times a year for a visit and scrambling to see everybody and rushing around and not really getting time to enjoy it, we live here and we visit Melbourne a few times a year. And I've kept my oncology team, my surgeon, over there. So I go back and have annual scans and tests and reviews. And I'm on medication, which I'll stay on for another few years. That's a bit of a pain in the ass, but anyway. But yeah, it's a good excuse to go over there, watch some footy, go eat out, see some live music, and get all that. So yeah, I'd much rather it this way around. Live here, visit there. Works for me.
I think we're just ticking over the hour mark, believe it or not,
yeah.
in this podcast. Is there anything you wanted to ask me at all about anything going on that you're not sure about in my life, or anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I just think that it's pretty cool that you're keeping us all connected in this way, and I think that's really awesome that you've. Is this Eastlands podcast?
I do hope we can get quite a few. Do at least a podcast a week on this. Would be good. It sort of came up with the idea, pretty much through COVID, and it came up and said, "Oh, I should be doing this. This is what I should be doing. I should be doing a podcast about connecting with old friends as well, because I can't naturally include anybody in the Brisbane one." So I said, okay, well, how can I sort of approach this? So it was a case of, okay, well, let's get a few people that we know, and then let's just get some momentum that way, and do it all using Zoom. Just get everyone on Zoom.
Yeah, so easy.
Whack it up on YouTube.
So who have you got in mind? Who's in the pipeline?
I actually wrote a bit of a list here. Let me just, lists. That's a list here. You tell what you think. I did write a list somewhere. Maybe some. I've already got Dustin, obviously.
Good to see Dusto. He hasn't changed a bit, has he?
No. Gina Wilson.
Little shit. Gina, yeah. She's good fun.
Jamie King.
Yep.
Who else have we got here? David Birch, Mark Rodham.
Oh, Birchie. Oh, Mark. Oh, Mark was at the reunion. He's good value.
Some other friends. I've asked Vaughan if he wants to go on, but he's a bit fucking. I'm not going to say anymore. He's a bit. Maybe Anthony Weston. What the fuck's he?
Oh, Anthony Weston. What about Lisa?
Lisa Rose, maybe. Or
yeah, she's got such an interesting life, and she's just had a little baby. She's the director of the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival or something. I think she lives in Sydney.
A couple of Maddie friends. I've got Matthew McDermott, Matthew Dennis. I think they both still live down in Hobart. So those guys are, they love we've kept in contact over the years. So yeah, maybe Robert Mann or Otoko, whatever he calls himself.
Yeah.
Gene
Yeah.
would be a good one, as you said.
Yeah.
Maybe Brad Heffernan. There's a few there.
Oh yeah, Brad. What about Brad?
So yeah, no, we'll see how it goes. See who comes on, and we're only 3 episodes in, and the Brisbane one we're getting up to just about episode 100. So that's been
Wow.
about
So what kind of people do you interview on the Brisbane one?
Yeah, so From the Valley podcast, sort of a spin on the Fortitude Valley, which is right next door to Brisbane. Mainly business people, mainly friends of mine that are in business. Usually there's a story connected to Brisbane with pretty much everyone that's been on the podcast, where they live in. Most of them live in Brisbane now. But I'll find some excuse to get some Brisbane connection with somebody if I have to get somebody. I've had some interesting people on there, some sports people. Andre Moore actually used to play for the Hobart Devils back in the 90s.
Oh, right, okay.
NBL. So some interesting.
Oh, that reminds me. I'm watching last week's, and you're hearing you and Dustin talk about is it the final dance or the last dance? The Jordan.
The Last Dance. Two more episodes on Netflix tomorrow.
I've got no idea about NBL, but oh my God,
NBA,
basketball, whatever. But it is just so good. Like, I'm loving it. So
you've seen those episodes as well, have you?
I've watched all the episodes that are out at the moment. So there's 2 new ones tomorrow night, I think. So we'll be watching.
They've had, I think it's a 10 episode series. So they've had 4 so far. But it's quite interesting, and it's interesting that you find it. It must be. It's really good that people that aren't even into basketball are sort of commenting on it, and it's obviously I think the word gets around with things like this sometimes. And
it's just I always, you hear these names in the periphery of your life, and someone who wasn't interested in basketball at all, I still knew who Michael Jordan was, and
everyone does,
but I had really, I couldn't pick him out of it. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what team he played for, or but he's actually a really eloquent, well-spoken, seems like a really well-balanced guy for somebody who's like a mega star. So I've really enjoyed watching it. It's been good.
Well, tune in tomorrow. I think it's 5 p.m. or something like that. The next couple of episodes.
I'm cooking in Colony 47 tomorrow, and then I'll be coming home to do my online boxing class, which I'm trying to make sure.
Online boxing. Wow, that sounds interesting. Yeah, no, it's been really good to catch up, Rach. It's been great to catch up, and we'll certainly catch up again. I think that's really, really good. We'll try to get some of these people. We'll share the episode out there. I'll get it on tonight. It'll be up on YouTube.
Okay.
So share it there. It'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the different places. So share it around. Dustin's had about 90 listens on his. The one we did last week, so
I won't be expecting
I don't know if we'll get that many.
There's going to be 90 people give a shit about.
But at least let's see if we can maybe aim for half of that. We'll see.
You start strong, get the high-profile ones in early, and then it's all just.
Well, sometimes you can pick up some profile ones along the way, but I love doing it. I think, as I said, I've been doing it for 2 years with the other series, and I've just got to come up with a new idea. And this will sort of serve for this year. I think this will sort of get from now until Christmas. I'm going to do an episode every week of at least, of this. So.
Good on you.
Anyway, great to talk to you. Good to talk to you about music. Always send me the messages about what you're thinking in the music.
As I said, get around the vans. They're just the bomb. The double N, VANNS.
I hope they're better than the chats.
Oh, God. I hate the chats.
See you later, anyway.
Cheers. Bye.